Hey guys, welcome to Wazowski TV Recaps channel. Today I'm going to recap the newly released musical movie called Pinocchio. There are heavy spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. Jiminy Cricket opened the movie singing "When You Wish Upon a Star" as he sits on a bookshelf. After the song ends, he slides down the shelf, beginning his story in a peaceful village at night, which Jiminy states he was passing through. Pinocchio's village is introduced at night, with only Geppetto's workshop showing signs of activity. The only building from which light seems to emanate is Geppetto's workshop. Jiminy hops over to the open window and peers in to see a warm fire in a room filled with beautifully carved toys, clocks, music boxes, and puppets. He enters the room and warms himself by the fire. He then notices a lifeless marionette puppet sitting on a shelf. He sees Geppetto coming down the stairs with Figaro to finish painting the puppet. Geppetto greets Cleo, whose bowl sits nearby. Having completed the marionette, he names it Pinocchio, which literally means little wooden head, and tests it out by walking it around the workshop to the tune of Little Wooden Head, which is played by one of the music boxes. The bells of the clocks that cover the walls of the workshop indicate that it's now 9 o'clock, and Geppetto announces that it is time for bed. After he, Figaro, and Cleo have bidden each other a good night, the woodcutter gets into bed to notice a wishing star through the window. He wishes that Pinocchio would become a real boy before falling asleep. The wishing star glows brighter and gets closer to the window, eventually reaching the workshop. It transforms into the Blue Fairy, who is about to make a fateful spell out of Geppetto's wish. She approaches Pinocchio and brings the puppet to life with the tap of her wand, and his strings vanish without a trace. Pinocchio is delighted and surprised at his ability to move and talk. The fairy informs him, however, that he is not a real boy yet and must prove himself brave, truthful, and unselfish in order to become one and learn the difference between right and wrong. After Jiminy hops in to explain to Pinocchio, the Blue Fairy decides to dub the cricket Pinocchio's temporary conscience and leaves, telling Pinocchio to always let his conscience be his guide. Jiminy tries to explain the concept of right and wrong, and though he is largely unsuccessful, Pinocchio tells him that he wants to do the right. The Blue Fairy then sings "Fate is kind" and closes the window, leaving the workshop. This wakes Geppetto, who cautiously searches the room. On finding Pinocchio moving and talking, he first thinks he is dreaming, but it eventually convinced and delighted that his son is alive. Winding the music boxes, Geppetto, Pinocchio, Figaro, and Cleo celebrate. Pinocchio is distracted by a candle, and not knowing what it is, sets his finger on fire. Geppetto panics and extinguishes the wooden boy's finger in Cleo's bowl. He decides that they should go to sleep before anything else happens. The next morning, the village is awake, the boys and girls hurry to school, and Pinocchio excitedly follows them, but is approached by a fox and a cat, who, knowing the value of a moving puppet without strings, befriend him, intending to sell him. The fox introduces himself as Honest John and tells Pinocchio that he is just the type to become an actor. He and his partner, the cat, lead him through the streets, while Honest John sings "He did an actor's life for me." Jiminy, meanwhile, is late for his first day and tries to tell Pinocchio not to give in to temptation, but is ignored, and Pinocchio accompanies the fox and cat to be an actor, while Jiminy desperately runs after them. Honest John takes Pinocchio to Stromboli's caravan, where puppet master Stromboli buys the wooden boy and makes him his star attraction. That evening, Jiminy watches from a lamppost as Pinocchio performs "I Have Got No Strings" for the audience, and is met with enthusiastic as onlookers throw money onto the stage, much to Strompoli's delight and Jiminy's surprise. Geppetto, meanwhile, is worried that Pinocchio has not returned from school and leaves the workshop to look for him. In Stromboli's caravan, after the show, the puppet master congratulates Pinocchio for making him so much money and tells him that he will become a star. Delighted, Pinocchio tries to go home to tell Geppetto and promises to be back in the morning, but is stopped by Stromboli, who grabs him and throws him into a wooden bird cage as he declares that this will be his home. After silencing Pinocchio's request for his freedom, Stromboli leaves the carriage and slams the door, cackling. The caravan begins to move and Pinocchio weeps as he tries to call out to his friend. Jiminy is outside in the rain, watching the caravan pass. He decides to wish Pinocchio good luck and say goodbye to him, and is surprised to find Pinocchio locked up. He tries to unlock the cage with his umbrella, but to no avail. He stays with Pinocchio as the two weep over their dilemma. Geppetto passes the caravan, but his calls for Pinocchio are not heard over the rain and thunder. When all hope seems lost after Pinocchio has realized his mistake, the wooden boy lies. His nose becomes longer with each lie he tells. Jiminy tells Pinocchio that a lie keeps growing until it's as plain as the nose on your face. After he informs Pinocchio that he is not telling the truth, Pinocchio promises to never lie again and his nose returns to its normal size. Jiminy frees Pinocchio from the cage and they sneak out of the caravan as it's moving, leaving Stromboli unnoticed. After leaving the caravan going back to the house, Pinocchio asks Jiminy the difference between friends and peers. He advises Pinocchio to be more cautious about peers in a group, as it could be great pressure. All of a sudden, Pinocchio gets caught by a group of boys carried by Stagecoach. They carry him to the crossroads with Jiminy once again in hot pursuit. When on the coachman's stagecoach, Pinocchio meets a bratty kid named Lampwick, who tells him that Pleasure Island is a swell joint where boys can run uprising without fear of authority figures and everything is freely available. The coach reaches the shore where the boys board a boat which takes them to the island. As the boys enjoy themselves at the fairground like Pleasure Island, the coachman orders minions to close the doors, locking the unknowing boys in. Later that night, Jiminy searches the now deserted fairground for Pinocchio. He eventually finds him playing pool with Lampwick, who scoffs that Pinocchio takes orders from a grasshopper, shooting the cricket down the pool gutter. This causes Jiminy to lose his temper and attempts to leave, quitting as Pinocchio's conscience once again. After discovering that Pinocchio is friends with Lampwick, he crawls under the main doors of the fairground to find the coachman and his minions loading donkeys into crates, going to places such as the salt mines and the circus. When Jiminy hears this, he realizes that those donkeys are actually the same boys who went to Pleasure Island, prompting the cricket to panic. Lampwick is still laughing and mocking about Jiminy when he suddenly sprouts donkey ears, a tail, and his head is transformed into a donkey's. Lampwick asks if he looks like a jackass, and Pinocchio replies that he does and laughs about it with a bray in his laugh. He asks Pinocchio if that came out of him, and Pinocchio frantically nods his head. Panicking, he pleads Pinocchio for help, but the boy is only able to look on in fright as Lampwick's hands turns into donkey hooves. Lampwick's last words are a frantic call for his mother before he loses the ability to talk. A speechless Pinocchio hides behind a chair, and his panic increases when he himself sprouts donkey ears and a tail. Running in great panic, Lampwick starts to kick everything in the... Jiminy arrives to tell Pinocchio that Pleasure Island is cursed. Then, frantically, tells him they must leave quickly before he gets any worse. They hurriedly take an escape route in order to avoid the same terrible fate as all the other boys. Together, they jump off Pleasure Island and swim to the shore of the mainland, with Pinocchio only having donkey tail, ears, and bray in his laugh, leaving the now transformed Lampwick, the transformed boys, the coachman, and his minions behind. Pinocchio and Jiminy arrive at Geppetto's workshop to discover the old woodcutter has left, along with Figaro and Cleo. Sophia leads them in the sea to Geppetto's whereabouts. Pinocchio starts telling his father of what has happened throughout the day, starting by being kicked out from the school, when suddenly he had been swallowed by Monstro, an enormous whale. Inside the belly of the whale, Geppetto is in a small boat with Figaro and Cleo. They have nothing to eat. Geppetto fears that unless Monstro opens his mouth soon, they will starve to death. Geppetto cries that they could not get out of the whale. However, Pinocchio has a plan. Gathering some wood, he starts a fire which causes Monstro to sneeze the boat out. Gemini jumps on as they fly past. Furious Monstro chases the boat and smashes it into pieces with his tail. Pinocchio grabs a hold of his father and paddles for a hole in the cliffs beyond as a means of escape. Monstro, infuriated as ever, continues to chase after them. Pinocchio succeeds in getting through the hole in the cliff just as Monstro crashes into it. Geppetto, Gemini, Figaro, and Cleo wash up on the shore alive, but Geppetto is seen floating face down in a deep puddle, apparently having died while trying to save his family. Gemini, Pinocchio, and the pets mourn Geppetto's death. However, Pinocchio starts singing to him, "Your dreams come true." The blue fairy grants him life, and he becomes a real boy, and the old Geppetto came back to life. They all went into the direction of the blue light to reach their home. Geppetto is proud of his son for saving his father. Pinocchio has proved himself brave, honest, and unselfish. And in his heart, Pinocchio is as real as any other boy could be.